Milton's Adventure, a Milton story, narrated by me, Ted Pawncroft. Chapter 11, Milton's Bizarre Adventure. Milton adjusted his latest hat, a traditional red and black farmer's cap woven of a thin, airy material, much akin to a man's darker topi traditionally worn in Nepal. Yet this new handcrafted headwear was not from any earthly continent, but from the strange, unfamiliar realm he was currently travelling through. He looked out of the train window to his left, which showed nothing more than the devouring blackness of night. He drew a grey linen curtain across the oppressive view and sunk back into his exceptionally comfy seat, resting his weary, yet cultural head against the spongy headrest. What a strange day it had been. It had all started about half a day prior, when he first appeared in this bizarre world by guidance of the bird. He'd been searching for a demon that he'd come to understand would reside here, but little did he know that he would in fact find three. The first, a pale ghoul that defied any further description, he had encountered attacking the rural farm he had space-transmutated in through. It posed little threat as an opponent, and died quickly at the mercy of Milton's deadly blade. As recompense, the cowering farmer, a human of tan skin and thin dark eyes, reluctantly gifted Milton his only remaining possession, the lovely ethnic hat that he now wore with pride. Milton had then followed the directions of the bird across the unending green wetlands to a nearby ruin, a dilapidated castle of mouldering red brick that once stood proudly overlooking the tiered rice paddies and rolling pastures that constituted the landscape. Here he had slain the second demon of the day. The crimson-caped champion had put up an adequate fight, but was ultimately no match for Milton's mighty telekinetic power, and died to a single brick in the left temple. Milton then advanced into a thick grove of tall bamboo-like plants that rose high into the sky. While marvelling at the towering green poles, he was sprung by the third demon, a masked assailant with ninja-like reflexes. Milton found this furtive foe to be more of a challenge, but eventually succeeded in tricking the demon with a simple rope trap and beheading it gruesomely. The realm had proven to be bountiful in terms of demonic Kragian presence, and Milton had wondered if he would fight any more, but a long trudge across the marshlands said otherwise. After hours of treading through dew-laden blades, he eventually came to the first sign of civilization he'd seen in a while, a strip of railroad running through the lands, a mechanized, electrical-powered kind of track that contrasted against the rural sights that he'd encountered so far. After walking alongside the railroad for many hours, Milton came to a crude station consisting of a raised trackside platform and a small uninhabited pagoda structure with little lanterns hanging from its four corners. The place was in keeping with the generic Asian themes that the realm reeked of, but he definitely wasn't complaining. It was like something out of a cool Miyazaki movie. He inspected a wooden sign affixed to the side of the building, which seemed to depict directions in painted kanji-esque characters that he didn't quite understand, despite his serviceable knowledge of the Japanese script. Hand-painted illustrations beneath the bold, swooshing text seemed to indicate that the railway would lead towards a city, judging by what Milton took to be drawings of big fat skyscrapers. The daylight had begun to fade, and the bright red sun of the realm was gradually falling behind the hills up front. Milton took to sitting on a bench by the side of the tracks, waiting for some kind of transport to appear. When the last light had faded completely and the four lanterns had become illuminated, Milton saw a train approaching at last, its front headlights illuminating the rippling grass as it approached noiselessly at speeds like which he'd never seen. Like its rails, the shiny white train was incredibly high-tech, like the Japanese Shinkansen, but without any sign of driver or crew. Milton boarded the vehicle dubiously, finding the interior to be completely devoid of any passengers, but incredibly comfortable. There he had sat for a good few hours, watching the train stop at more and more similar rustic-looking stations. The stops were becoming more frequent, but the speeding train never picked up any more passengers as it advanced towards its destination, a series of twinkling, colourful lights on the horizon. Milton fiddled around with his armrest, moving it up with a click, and then pushing it all the way down until it locked into place. He couldn't click it back up, so he just left it in case it was broken. A sudden vibration came from his trouser pocket, and he promptly pulled out the little green plastic bird. The familiar ceased its loud humming, and the tinny voice of Milton's father began to radiate from it.
Hello, Milton, are you there?
Milton sat up in his seat, surprised at the sudden call from Jamie. It had been a while since he'd received one of these.
Dad? Hello?
Milton?
Came his father's voice again, raised exponentially in pitch as it passed through the bird's compact speaker system.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Said Milton, still quite shaken by the unexpected call.
Oh, there you go. No, I can hear you now.
Replied Jamie.
What are you calling me about, Dad?
Asked Milton.
Where have you been?
Jamie responded.
Okay, look, sorry I only just got your missed calls. I've been really hung up on this whole Gordon Ramsay thing. He's got us on a flying goose chase right through the far savannas of the Pucker realm in search of his secret cave lair. The reception's really patchy out here.
He paused to exhale deeply into the receiver.
I'm really fucking tired. I think I'm gonna be sick. Oh, God. I shouldn't have eaten Ainsley's pineapple toasty.
The line went silent for a few seconds.
Dad, are you okay?
Inquired Milton.
Huh? Sorry, I just fell asleep there for a second. Right, what were you calling about?
No, Dad, you called me.
Attested Milton, confused.
I mean before, Milton. I may be tired, sick, and covered in bruises, but I'm not stupid. Now why did you summon for me twice a couple of days ago?
Milton thought back to his previous adventure on the Sea of Sus, and the things he had done, many of which he would rather not relay back to his father.
No reason. Must have been a pocket dial.
Haha, alright. How did killing that dirty great black beast go?
It was easy. Killed it in one hit.
Milton suddenly recalled the thrilling climax of his adventure.
I found Mountain Monkey Island too!
What was that, Milton? The line cut out.
Said Jamie.
I found Mountain Monkey Island.
Repeated Milton.
You found Uncle Ian? What?
Oh, never mind.
Replied Milton, deeming that now was not the time to tell his father the exciting news.
Also, Malaga decided to stay there.
Who? Look, you've got me for 2 more minutes. It costs a bloody arm and a hammer to get reception out here in the mangroves.
Milton promptly relayed his erstwhile adventures to his father.
Well, after I left Sus, I picked the next available demon on the list, number 2, which you know is Rice Pudding Man. So I space transmutated to him and found myself in this strange land of endless rice and farmers. Actually, it's a little bit like the rice fields from TV Filthy Frank.
Filthy TV what?
Asked Jamie.
Come on, speed along here.
Okay. So I killed Rice Pudding Man, but then I suddenly came across number 51, Diavolo the Crimson King, in his crazy Crimson Castle. And then lo and behold, I also found number 37, the Soot Ninja. I couldn't figure out why he was called that though, but they weren't particularly hard targets at all. None of them took more than 20 seconds to slay.
Jamie ruminated.
If I'm not mistaken, it seems that these 3 demons have, how should I put it, a distinctly oriental flavour.
Oh, Dad, you can't say that anymore. I think that might be really racist.
Berated Milton under his breath in case anyone heard him.
Oh, you know what I mean. Now, if I didn't know any better, I'd say that you're in Mumbodia.
Bungodia? What?
Mumbodia. It's a pocket-dimensional micro-gummy realm, mostly filled with a lot of farmers and rice. What else did you do there? It's a savage place. You could be in a lot of danger.
Nah, it wasn't that dangerous at all, Dad. I killed them so easily.
No. Okay, you listen to me, young man. I don't want to have to come there and rescue you like I did in the meat realm.
Milton's attention wavered as Jamie continued his lecture about the dangers of micro-gummy realms, and he cast aside the curtains to look out of the window, which now offered a vastly different view. His jaw dropped. The train was passing through the biggest city he'd ever seen, far bigger than that of Los Angeles or even Capitol Creus, both horizontally and vertically. Skyscrapers taller than mountains were lit up with lights of pink and blue, making the skyline look like the front cover of a cool vaporwave album from 2011. Illuminated billboards and flashing adverts plastered every inch of every high-rising structure, showing all manner of wacky products and quirky mascot characters. Roaming spotlights lit up every single building in full commercial glory, revealing that some were themed around classic Japanese things, like a giant golden skyscraper that possessed a cat's head and a giant waving paw, or a high-rise covered entirely in black and white ahegao faces. Some of the structures were more traditional, looking like 10-story pagodas or golden Zen temples with tiered gardens of flowering sakura blossom trees. Milton even saw 2 twin towers that resembled mighty wooden chopsticks, or hashi as he knew them. While he gazed in veneration, he tuned back into his father's droning voice.
On the floor. So remember that at all costs. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Whatever you do, stay away from Anime City. That place will do you no good. You hear me?
Milton licked his lips, staring up at the impending neon utopia.
Stay away from Anime City. Got it.
Right, I'm gonna skedaddle now. Nigella's found some fresh drop-ins that could be a clue. Stay safe and be good. And once more, stay away from Anime City.
The bird emitted a beep and fell silent. By now, Milton's face was pressed up against the glass of the train window, bathing in the wonderful fantasy megapolis. So this was the Anime City he'd been hearing so much about. The place was like something plucked directly from his wildest daydreams. He simply had to see more. The train came to a gradual stop, and Milton jumped to his feet, pulling on his backpack and rushing to the sliding doors, which parted quickly on approach. He jumped from the locomotive and glanced around hungrily as it whizzed off behind him. The train seemed to have dropped him slap bang in the centre of the city, which buzzed with life all around him. He jogged down the steps from the elevated train line, which was hemmed on either side with more pink blossom trees and statues that looked almost exactly like Arcanine from Pokémon. The existence of this otaku's paradise was mind-boggling. An entire city devoted to Japanese animation? He gripped onto the straps of his Attack on Titan backpack. It's like the place had been made for him. At the bottom of the steps, he came to a wide street with all manner of vehicles zooming past at a speed limit beyond even the reasoning of Barry Podmore. Most of the cars looked like basic blocky rectangular shapes of varied colour and size, but some were plastered with beautiful renderings of cartoon waifus or had makizushi for wheels. Others seemed to reference anime more directly, like a Toyota Trueno AE86 from Initial D, or the actual cat bus from My Neighbor Totoro. Milton even spotted a car that looked to be formed of folded origami, which collapsed neatly into the driver's pocket when it pulled up to the curbside. Then there was the tram, whose entire upper section appeared to be a mobile izakaya restaurant, complete with seated feasting customers and a central itame serving hot fried food. The vehicle oozed a heavy eastern stench, which made Milton's belly rumble. He had to go further in. As Milton advanced into the city, he started to notice the people around him. Pedestrians on either side of the road walked in single file beneath the neon streetlights, each one looking like a main character in their very own anime, with their spiky multicoloured hair and enlarged expressive eyes. The nearest to Milton, a gentleman sporting a flashing green suit and an authentic Naruto headband, passed by without so much as a glance at the outlander with his farm hat on. This was the type of place where anyone could blend in, no matter what they wore. Two bountiful-breasted women with kitsune ears poking out the top of their dyed white hair passed quickly by Milton as he joined the procession of humans, which included a horde of men with grotesque kabuki masks and a very small man atop a rolling katamari. On the other side of the road, a fleet of girls dressed in school uniforms hurried past with slices of bread in their mouths, a recognizable trope which made Milton nod and smile. He knew what was happening here. He understood this place. In no time at all, Milton had become totally lost in weeaboo heaven. Signs advertising maid cafes and hentai dispensaries flashed before his eyes as he staggered through the busy high streets. He didn't even know what time it was. He'd assumed that it was late at night due to how long he'd been on the train, But people still seemed to be in full shopping mode, despite the fact that the moon was high in the sky. His head spinning, he seated himself on a bench and took a series of deep breaths. If he wasn't careful, this place would get the better of him just like Jamie had warned. He focused his eyes on a giant billboard above a storefront opposite him. The huge screen showed a green chibi lizard-like creature waddling along with its unblinking Pac-Man eyes. Suddenly the screen flickered and changed to some kind of announcement, all the nearby shoppers stopping to look up at it. The same Mumbodian text that Milton had seen at the train station and all around the city flashed up, and a man in a sharp tuxedo suit stepped into frame. The stern-faced fellow, who had a slick-back black widow's peak haircut and dark, unreadable eyes, piqued Milton's interest instantly. The man, whose suit jacket seemed to be formed of some kind of expensive-looking alligator skin, began to address the citizens, which to Milton's ear sounded a lot like common Nihongo, spoken in an austere and stony tone.
挨拶はねめして、それはあなたの謙虚なリーダー。Deibu Goro desu.
The suited man twisted his mouth into a forced smile and bowed very slightly.
これは最高の会社からの発表です。最高の会社が提示します。Biggest ドキドキコレクティブルスーパーストアです。
The screen showed an image of a giant store and text above it which almost certainly meant new. This was an advert for a new shop, Milton gathered.
使おう使おう使おう。さよなら、私の美しい市民。
The broadcast ended and returned to the little animated lizard dude. Milton paused for thought. He could swear that he recognized something about the man, whose name he had gleaned to be Deibu Goro. Little alarm bells rang in the back of his mind, and he snapped his fingers, speaking aloud.
I know what it is. He looked just like Giovanni from Team Rocket.
Content that he had solved the mystery, Milton arose from the bench, turned right, and instantly set eyes upon the very same building from the announcement. At the end of the street, past the Pokemon Center selling real-life pet monsters that fit in your pocket, and the rows and rows of gacha machines with people queuing up to receive cheap-quality plastic artifacts, was the biggest shop Milton had ever seen in his life. The Don Quixote-like superstore rose high into the sky and seemed to have at least 100 floors, making it the tallest in the city by a long shot. To Milton's knowledge, the giant sign on the megastore roughly translated to Greatest Company Presents Anime City Biggest Thump Thump Collectibles Store. Beneath the colourful blocky logo was the reptile mascot once more, this time fashioning a flashy top hat and a cane. Milton ran forward, bursting into a Naruto run out of sheer joy. He weaved through the crowds of people swarming outside and pushed his way into the vibrant megamart. Immediately he was met with the colourful assault of 1 million plastic posable and non-posable figurines, vacuum-sealed foil holographic trading cards, and cases of manga volumes sat stacked sky-high upon shelves that touched the ceiling about 20 feet up. Sliding ladders positioned on the sides of every mile-long aisle allowed the customer to peruse the goods like in an old-fashioned library. Beautiful female employees in tight green uniforms welcomed Milton into the newly opened Emporium of Collectibles, handing him leaflets and complimentary sweet treats, again adorned with the cute little mascot of the greatest company. Milton gladly accepted the free stuff and grabbed a small wheeled cart. It looked like he was one of the first to be let in. The only other people in here were an Australian-looking bloke with a swooping brunette fringe, and a strange-looking bespectacled man in a red floral shirt and a safari hat. A catchy jingle that sounded a lot like the Dame Dane song from Yakuza 0 played through the store's speaker system, a melody recognisable enough for even Milton to hum along to as he waltzed down the first aisle. He promptly got to work piling anything that he recognised into his little carty. A stuffed plushie of Astro Boy, a 12-inch figure of Ken Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul, and a Nintendo Entertainment System wallet. He made sure that he got at least one thing from every single aisle, until his trolley was close to buckling from the sheer volume of merchandise. After skimming through an aisle displaying hundreds of future JoJo's Bizarre Adventure parts that had not yet been released in reality, and being kicked out from the sprawling 18+ section with a nosebleed, Milton found himself in an aisle that exclusively sold the very same Attack on Titan Survey Corps errand backpack he currently wore. For a moment he contemplated getting an upgrade to the much cooler black model, but reminded himself that it would not possess the infinite storage capabilities and would greatly limit what else he could take back to reality with him. When Milton's cart could truly hold no more, he heaved his way to the checkout area, where an attractive young clerk scanned items with comically large barcode scanners and impressive dexterity. It crossed Milton's mind that he hadn't even taken a look at the upper levels as he watched a large masculine woman with a stubbly double chin and a necklace sporting a yellow Sonic the Hedgehog-like creature leaving with 2 XL Saga body pillows and a towering stack of bargain bin Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Milton approached the cashier and watched intently as his goods were zapped and bagged into sturdy-looking paper satchels bearing the lizard mascot.
Oh, awesome,
he said, smiling at the girl, who smiled back, blushing. It came time to pay, and Milton dug his old brown wallet out from his bag. This thing would soon be superfluous the minute he'd paid for his NES piece. He pulled out the hefty cash wad he'd received from Barry a few days before, and the clerk's already very wide blue eyes widened dramatically.
Sugoi!
She spluttered in disbelief. Milton looked at the dirty paper banknotes that he'd inadvertently scrunched up in his fist.
What? It's just money.
The cute shoujo got up from her chair, delicately leaning across the conveyor belt to scrutinize Milton's big greens.
Nani?
She stuttered as she pulled a £5 note from Milton's claw and held it up to the fluorescent pink tube lights above.
Nani te koto da?
She daintily stowed the single leaf of tender into the register and began to count out Milton's change. 1 note, 2 notes, 4 notes, 20 notes. The girl handed over a fat stack of semi-translucent plastic bills bearing the sombre face of Deibu Goro. Drool wept from the sides of Milton's mouth. His English pound sterling was worth a fortune over here. A single dog-eared fiver that had once been used by Barry to snort heroin was translating into about 3,000 Mumbodian yen. Milton accepted the thick stack of foreign bills, tucking them into both his old wallet and his new Epic Gamer's wallet. When those were full, he filled each of his socks, and then just put the rest under his farmer's cap. He hastily filled his monkey magic sack with all the plastic goods, then bowed to the cashier, who blushed and giggled again. Milton cruised to the double doors, his mind in a financial frenzy. He hadn't even spent £5. He'd filled a trolley with enough cool shit to cover all 4 walls and the floor of his bedroom at home, and it hadn't even set him back 5 smackers. Milton began to breathe very quickly. This entire city was his proverbial oyster. He could do anything, buy anything, be anyone. He sprinted from the store with one thing on his mind: hot food. Milton seated himself at the little backstreet izakaya he had found. He'd followed his nose and come to a section of Anime City that appeared to be called Greatest Company Presents Little Udon Town, and picked the eatery with the most golden iconography on the sign, which would therefore be the most expensive. The place was all wooden stools and red paper chochin that twinkled and swayed in the cool night breeze. A waiter in a maid outfit with cat ears bestowed Milton with a glossy golden menu, which was to be read back to front like a manga book. His mouth watered at the sight of the delicious dishes.
Oh, man. Why does food in anime always have to look so good?
After perusing every page of what the place had to offer, Milton settled on the biggest, most steamy-looking bowl of fat ramen noodles laden with the most expensive-looking marbled meat cuts. He beckoned the cat-suited serving man over and pointed to his choice, and 3 minutes later the heaping bowl was before him. He cracked a pair of chopsticks and dug in, making sure to make as much noise as humanely possible so the cooks and all the other diners would know just how piping hot the dish was. Unfortunately, his slurping was drowned out by the loud roar of 2 engines chugging down the little side street. Milton pivoted on his stool, a long noodle dangling from between his puckered lips, to see 2 long-haired men on futuristic motorbikes that were like something out of Akira or Tron Legacy. He could recognise those 2 bearded chaps anywhere.
Oh, it's the hairy bikers,
he said through a mouthful of carbohydrates, hailing the 2 men as they dismounted their space bikes. The stout, dark-haired biker nudged the taller, grey-haired one.
Why, aye, Kingy, look who it is.
The 2 men approached, followed by a small party of meek-looking young folk of mixed nationality and gender, all clad in chef's attire. Simon Cy King extended a gloved hand to meet Milton's own broth-soaked paw.
Milton, mate. Long time no see.
Dave Myers smiled his cheeky little smile and spoke in his thick Geordie accent.
What are you doing out here, mate? It's a fair way to come for a lad your age.
Milton brought his bowl onto his lap so he could continue feasting while talking to the pucker chefs.
Oh, I'm just on a mission for Jamie. Man, I haven't seen you guys since Italy. What are you doing out here?
The two hair-covered bikers looked at each other, grinning and rubbing their hands together.
Well, we've taken up roles as wandering Puckanese mentors, travelling all around the place and spreading the good word, you know,
said Dave enthusiastically.
Beats being back at the monastery,
laughed Cy.
But aye, we're taking these trainee Pucker pupils on a little Asian adventure. A little field trip showing them the smells and tastes of Oriental cuisine like.
The adolescent apprentices shifted on their feet, looking uneasily around the bustling alleyways.
And what better place for it than Mumbodia's very own Anime City? You can go to town on great hot bait and not even break a 20.
Grinned Dave, blinking and pushing his glasses up his nose.
Yeah, so I found.
Agreed Milton.
This place is nuts. I can't believe no one ever told me about this.
Cy twiddled his curly grey moustache.
Well, I'm surprised your dad did. He used to say to us, never ever tell Milton about Anime City. It'll be the death of him.
The two bikers chuckled, and Milton narrowed his eyes.
Yeah.
Dave clocked Milton's bowl, elbowing his foodie partner.
Here, Kingy, what's that then, eh? Udon noodles?
Cy looked at Milton's meal, then back at Dave.
Udon noodles? We love those, don't we?
The two chuckled, and Milton furrowed his brow, swallowing a big sinewy bit of beef.
So, what are those then?
Milton indicated the high-tech motorbikes that stood upright without the need for a kickstand. Dave rubbed his leather gauntlets together.
Thought you'd never ask, Milton. These are our brand spanking new Space Transmutation Space Hop Cycles.
Cy proudly mounted his Space Hop cycle, which was blue, as opposed to Dave's white.
Quah, they're absolutely fantastic bits of kit, these. They can make 0 to 70 in 2 seconds and can travel through the gummy zone proper belter-like.
A pang of jealousy shot through Milton's brain.
What? Really? Yeah, watch this.
Cy clicked a switch on the end of his bike's handlebars, and a small headlamp on the front illuminated, transitioning quickly between all the colours of the rainbow. He revved the engine, and the air in front of the bike rippled, tearing apart, to reveal a freshly made gummy warp point. Thick noodles dropped from Milton's mouth as he watched Cy lean forward and shoot off through the shimmering tear in the air, only to reappear seconds later a few metres behind from a second hole, both of which faded soon after.
Job's a good 'un.
Cy dismounted his bike with swagger, and the pucker students clapped in awe.
And you know what the real canny good part is like?
Said Dave.
They've got their very own gyroscopic gravimetric stabilisation system, so there's never any risk of crash, and that means no helmets, so we don't have to mess up our world-famous hair that we're known for.
Milton stood up to touch the body of the shiny new bike.
Where did you get these from? Oh, I want one.
Cy unzipped the breast pocket on his leather biker jacket and pulled out a business card, handing it to Milton. The card read, Dr. Chamberlain's Workshop of Gidgets and Gasmoids, and had a peculiar black and white pen illustration of a top hat with a cog balanced atop it. Milton scoffed.
What the fuck is this?
Dave beamed earnestly.
That's where to find Dr. Chamberlain, look.
He pointed to the bottom of the card, where the address Stovepipe Spire, Lower Waldham, Fume-Derry upon Smodge, was written in fanciful serifed text.
He specialises in interspatial travelling technology. We commissioned him to make these custom bikes in his workshop. Got sick of nursing headaches from banging into doors all the time.
It was epic. Only took him a week to make 'em. And he gave us a discount and all because we're in the pucker order. I bet you could get a discount too.
Cy laughed, wagging his finger.
But be sure to pass your motorcycle test first.
Milton rubbed his chin, making a mental note to visit this chap as soon as he could. He pocketed the business card.
Would this Dr. Chamberlain guy be able to make any kind of space transmutative device? Like, it's not just limited to a bike, right?
Dave shrugged.
Probably. He's a bit of a mad scientist type. Real wacky character. Always wears a top hat that's about 1 metre tall and covered in gears and cogs. Won't be able to get a word in, mind. He's an eccentric gentleman.
Milton nodded, bringing the ramen bowl to his mouth and draining the last of the broth into his gullet. The two bearded bikers exchanged glances once more.
Oh, hey man, we best be heading off. Got to show these guys how sushi's made.
Sai indicated the timid novices.
Maybe you could join us for one of these expeditions when you're a bit older, eh, Milton?
Milton frowned.
Yeah, I don't know about that. See you around, guys.
The hairy bikers shrugged indifferently and waved, leading their apostles off down the thin alley and talking loudly about the preparation of California rolls. Milton paid for his meal, tipping the cat-eared waiter generously. He stood up and patted his tummy. He could definitely fit a bit more in here. All the talk of sushi had got him craving a bit of rice and raw fish, and the place just across the street looked to be a fine establishment for it. Milton disappeared through the doors of Sashimi Sunrise Shop and began a legendary food crawl that would take him across the entirety of Udon Town and deep into the early hours of the morning. The last thing he remembered before blacking out was getting into a fight with a man in a karaoke bar over the pronunciation of the word sake. Then his vision had begun to blur. Milton awoke in a gutter by the side of the road. The red morning sunlight sliced through a gap in between two restaurants across the street and straight into his groggy eyes. A Pocari Sweat delivery truck rushed past, inches away from where his legs lay over a drain cover. He looked down at his body, which was covered in sticky rice and wasabi paste. Jojo parts 9 and 10 lay torn and crumpled in a pool of soy sauce next to him, and the detached head of a Mega Man Nendoroid was gripped tightly in his left hand. A big yellow rat with brown stripes on its back nibbled at some rice at the corner of his mouth.
It's my pet rat,
mumbled Milton, barely conscious.
What happened?
He groaned, loose grains of rice toppling from his mouth and nose. He woozily shooed the rat away and it scarpered off. He seemed to have spent the night by some big dumpster bins with the fairy tale guild mark on them. It must have been an eventful night indeed. He groped around for his backpack, which thankfully was right next to him, now with considerably more Hatsune Miku pin badges and Hunter x Hunter keychains dangling from it.
Oh, another one.
Ah, you're finally awake,
Came a voice from somewhere behind him, at first in the traditional Mumbodian language, then overdubbed slightly louder into his brain in English. Milton cocked his head towards the noise, pulling his farmer's cap out of his eyes.
What? Who goes there?
An elderly man slid into Milton's view. He possessed a white, airy beard of about 6 inches, and wrinkled, deep-set eyes and light grey robes, looking much like an elderly sensei from just about any kung fu flick. As Milton gazed lower, he noticed that the old-timer sat in a wheelchair, but certainly not your average wheelchair. The thing was bright shiny red with futuristic white fins and spoilers, looking more like an expensive Japanese supercar than something used to cart around a senior citizen. The old man smiled knowingly as he looked down upon Milton, talking again in his true voice, intercut with his translated voice.
my boy. You seem to have hit, as you say, rock bottom.
Milton rubbed his eyes.
Who are you?
The old man bowed in his sitting position.
I am known by many as Master Yasai. And you, young shonen?
Milton winced, unable to conjure up a clever alias.
I'm Milton Hamley Oliver.
The old man smiled and nodded his head.
Milton-san. Well met.
I don't feel at all well, Master Yasai.
Groaned Milton, clutching his fatty abdomen. Yasai fingered his wispy beard, wheeling himself around Milton to get a better look.
Milton-san. I can sense that you have great power. You are giving off energy that I have felt only once before. Your body is powerful, but your mind does not know how to use it. You must harness your inner seishin.
Milton propped himself up on his elbow, intrigued. This old bloke was giving off massive magical vibes.
My inner what?
Master Yasai laughed.
You seek answers to many questions. Come and visit me in my dojo. It is nearby in distance, yet it will be a great effort to get there. Come, if you wish to learn true power.
The old man laughed again, then spun his wheelchair 180 and rolled across the road with surprising velocity. Milton watched in confusion as the geezer turned off down an alleyway and disappeared from sight. What a strange fellow indeed. What did he mean by inner Seishin? He heaved himself up and dusted off the last of the rice. Already feeling slightly better, he adorned his backpack and hightailed it off in pursuit of the old man. The back alley led Milton straight out of Udon town and into a great open square where some kind of massive carnival seemed to be taking place. He glanced around at the crowds of costumed people and parades of flags and banners. This carnival, of course, was celebrating anime. All around, people were dressed as Akatsuki clan members and the fella from Full Metal Alchemist, accompanied by the joyous sound of a brass band playing the Attack on Titan Series 2 theme tune. Milton kept his head down, but found it excruciatingly hard to ignore the cosplayers attempting to gift him a free month subscription to Crunchyroll Premium. As he passed through the centre of the square, a large steamy fountain caught his eye, filled with partying babes thinly veiled with wafts of steam like in his favourite anime hot spring scenes. Milton turned away and kept his gaze firmly ahead. Through the swarms of characters, he fought to see the wrinkled, grinning face of Master Yasai for a split second. At last the crowd subsided, and Milton came to another narrow alleyway. There wasn't a soul in sight down this thin avenue, and not a single reference to anime or anything remotely Japanese anywhere to be seen. A loud slam came from a heavy door ahead and to his left. He approached it cautiously, the distant sounds of the festival growing further and further away. He pushed the door open with a low creak, stepping into the dark space tentatively.
"Bird, light this place up!"
commanded Milton, his voice echoing around the large room. Before his familiar could illuminate the space, the door shut behind with a big bang, and several hanging paper lanterns sparked on overhead. Master Yasai sat waiting in his chair in the centre of the great square hall, with traditional paper screens on all four sides and a spongy-looking tatami mat floor. On either side of him were two large hanging scrolls with vertical ink-painted symbols.
You have passed the first part of the test, Milton-san,
came the familiar dubbed voice of Yasai.
You have resisted the temptations of the bi-weekly festival of anime. Welcome to my dojo.
Milton looked around the impressive sparring hall, one question bouncing around his brain.
"What do you want with me?"
Master Yasai wheeled himself forward.
This question will be answered in good time, young man. Now, you must show me your true, innermost power.
"What do you mean?"
asked Milton suspiciously, readying himself into a battle stance. This talk was sounding a lot like the talk of a demon. Perhaps that explained the strange feeling Milton got from the old fellow. Yasai chuckled.
You are the bearer of the Bloodstone Chalice. I have met one of your kind before in an age long since past. You radiate the same powerful energy as he did. Your Seishin is strong.
"You know of the chalice?"
bellowed Milton.
"Tell me who you are."
Yasai shook his head.
All will be revealed after your test. Now, draw the relic and show me your power.
Milton obliged the old duffer and opened up his backpack, withdrawing the chalice simply by willing it to the top of his magic bag. He gripped the little glass goblet in his hand, where it reflected the red glow of the lanterns. Master Yasai grinned widely.
Come at me. Do not hold back.
"Very well,"
said Milton dramatically, cupping the chalice in two hands. Positioning one foot behind him, he drew the glass back like he was doing a Kamehameha from Dragon Ball. Having no idea whether anything would happen, Milton thrust his hands forward, and a blinding white shockwave of power surged forth, impelling Master Yasai from his wheelchair, and sending his shriveled body flying across the room, to crash through the paper-thin sliding screen at the back, and strike his bald head hard against the dojo's wooden outer walls. Milton put his hands on his hips, proud of his impressive expulsion.
"That good enough for you, Master Yas?"
A cackle came from the far end of the hall, and Yasai clapped his withered hands. Immediately, the red and white wheelchair pivoted on the spot and zoomed off towards its master. The old man heaved himself back into it with his spindly arms and dusted his robes off, whereupon he wheeled himself back into the center of the dojo.
I'm impressed, Milton-san. You have passed the second part of the test. You wield great power, but it is sloppy. You must still harness your inner Seishin.
Milton rolled his eyes.
What's all this stuff about Seishin? Was it some kind of delicious sauce?
I can teach you,
Offered Yasai.
but you must pass the third and final part of the test. Remove your most expensive item that you have purchased here in Anime City and set it before me on the ground.
Okay.
Replied Milton dubiously, pulling out the 16-inch Sailor Moon Venus statuette he'd bought in the superstore the day before. It was unopened in its pink sparkly box, and Milton had planned to place it on the highest shelf in his room, pride of place next to his priceless unopened Harley Quinn pop vinyl. He delicately set down the figurine on the floor, as Yasai had instructed.
Now, destroy it.
Commanded Yasai.
What?
Hollered Milton, offended.
I can't do that. It's mint in box.
Master Yasai said no more, having closed his wizened eyes.
This is bullshit.
Decreed Milton, picking up his collectible and making for the door.
I'm not doing that, you crazy old fogey. You can keep your Seishin source magic and stick it where the rising sun don't shine.
Milton marched towards the exit, but a sudden huge blast of golden energy engulfed him, casting him to the floor and knocking all the wind out of him. He twitched around on the floor as Master Yasai rolled towards him.
You're a demon, aren't you?
Cried Milton.
You're going to kill me, aren't you?
Yasai spoke.
Perhaps there is a little demon in all of us, Milton-san, but I am not what you seek to destroy. However, I can help you in your task.
Tell me who you really are,
demanded Milton, his eyes still partially blinded from the afterglow of the yellow blast.
Very well.
Nodded the old man.
I am the last in a long line of magic users. My people were the Koyotan monks from the distant island of Manmuthra, located far off the coast of Mambodia. My ancestors traveled across the seas and settled in these once empty lands. The city you now stand in was one such settlement, though it has changed a lot since then.
You don't say.
Interrupted Milton.
It's gone anime crazy.
Yasai giggled.
Milton-san. It may surprise you to learn that all anime and Japanese media as you know it originates from this very realm. All your favorite characters such as Pikachu the Electric Rat or Ultraman existed here long before they came into your world as trading cards and TV shows. Mere echoes of their former glory.
Milton considered this and nodded.
That's pretty cool.
Yasai wheeled himself in a circle around Milton.
In Anime City, not everything is pretty cool, however. You have seen Deibu Goro, the mastermind behind the greatest company?
Milton cast his mind back to the man in the suit on the billboard.
Yeah, for sure.
He is what you would refer to as a demon.
Deibu Goro is a demon?
Said Milton, his jaw dropping.
Of course! I knew I recognised something about him. His name's on the list. Oh, I remember now.
Milton uncrumpled the list of demons from his pocket and scanned it until his eyes came upon number 8, Deibu Goro. Yasai continued.
Yes, Deibu Goro is one of the most powerful demonic presences. Thousands of years old and able to conceal his true powers like a tiger hides his stripes. Indeed, he was once a pupil of mine, before he turned to evil.
You're joking!
Cried Milton, aghast. Yasai hung his head.
Goro-san was the last student to be trained in this very dojo long ago, when Anime City was no more than a 2-generation dynasty. But the one you know as Krog got to him and turned him evil, taking control of the citadel and slowly turning it into what it is today, a hive of custom and consumption, slowly brainwashing all its citizens with colorful merchandise and plastic characters. I was banished and have returned in secret only recently, but I fear he may have found this out. The opening of the new greatest company Doki Doki collectible megastore is his latest wicked scheme, and if we do not intervene, who can say what evils will befall Mambodia?
Milton looked at the figure clutched tightly in his hand.
That place is evil too.
Hi, Milton-san.
Yes, Milton. Deibu's corporation owns and controls everything here in Anime City. Everything has been carefully constructed to control the minds of the population. For example, the unlimited access to body pillows and free pornography keep the men placid and distracted, while the noodles of Udon Town sterilize them.
Milton felt his stomach turn as Yasai continued. Thank God he'd already tactically thrown up all he'd eaten the night before.
He seeks to dull the senses of all his customers in preparation for some kind of takeover, though who truly knows what he's planning?
Something to do with Krog, I'll bet.
Speculated Milton.
And I don't want to wait around and find out. I've already tarried long enough in this silly place. If I'd have known there was a demon here, I would have slayed it and been away in an instant. Now teach me how to do that big anime blast, and I'll go take this Deibu guy on.
Master Yasai laughed.
I will teach you the powers of Sunlight Yellow Overdrive. But you must know that this alone is not enough to vanquish Goro. For his power is different to the majority of demons I understand you have been crossing off your list so far.
Go on,
said Milton, taking to sitting cross-legged on the soft dojo floor. The old man rested his gnarled hands in his lap.
The time has come for me to teach you the art of harnessing your inner seishin. This is an ancient technique of my people, a method by which we separate our soul from our body, acting as an external life force. Do you see my wheeled chair? This is my seishin. While my body may be old and weak, my spirit is able to carry me.
Milton gazed upon the contraption with newfound wonder.
Whoa! Is that thing alive?
It is as alive as it needs to be,
replied Yasai ambivalently. Milton rubbed his chin.
So it's like a familiar?
Yasai nodded.
If you wish to call it that.
Well, I already have one of those.
Milton clapped, and the bird fluttered from his backpack side pouch. Yasai beheld the little plastic butterfly with narrowed eyes.
A Pocanarium familiar, of course. Then you have already undertaken the ceremony of soul separation?
Milton recalled his father rubbing some strange orange powder into his palm, causing him to throw up the little plastic toy at Lodestone Lodge well over a month ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent,
grinned Yasai.
Then the hard work is already complete. Now the task that remains is for you to train your seishin over time, for it to become more powerful. Looking at the current state of your seishin, this could take weeks, if not months.
Milton's heart sank.
What? Oh, come on. Are you joking? You said it yourself. We don't have that long.
Yasai shook his head.
The art of training your seishin takes time, Milton-san. It may not look like it, but my seishin took me thousands of years to perfect. Deibu Goro is much the same. If you were to face him now, he would slay you in an instant.
What's his seishin then? Big pile of cash?
Snorted Milton.
Alas, I do not know, for he keeps it well concealed.
Milton threw his hands up in the air.
Oh, what are we supposed to do then? I mean, killing these demons doesn't usually require months of training.
Master Yasai raised his bony forefinger.
Good things come to the man who waits, Milton-san. I can show you how to harness the true potential of your seishin, and you can defeat Deibu Goro sooner than you think.
Milton continued to probe the old man for information, but it soon became clear that the only way around this was to humour him and do a little bit of training. He was sure he could take on Deibu Goro regardless, but there would be nothing wrong with taking some pointers from the old dude, and maybe learning that cool yellow blast attack. After a few hours of being instructed to stand on one leg for as long as possible, Milton began to lose patience.
Oh, I don't have time for this. Didn't you see how many other demons there are on that list? I've got to kill, like, all of those.
The disabled senpai shook his head.
Patience, Milton-san. We have a saying here that goes, Anime City Prefecture, despite the rumors of our enemies, was not built in a day.
Nuts to that. Just teach me how to do that big Baja Blast already.
Yasai opened his old mouth to speak, but a loud noise came from the reinforced metal doors at the front of the dojo. Milton pivoted on his one grounded foot.
What was that?
Master Yasai had turned pale.
I do not know, but I fear it will be a great misfortune.
Another thump came from the metal door. Milton lost his balance and fell to his knees, a great Kragian energy-induced headache clouding his mind.
Demons!
The door gave way and light flooded the dark quarter of the hall. In silhouette was the outline of a very tall man, of broad shoulder and short hair. He stepped forward, flanked on either side by two more broad figures. Milton looked up to lay eyes on the businessman from the billboard, Deibu Goro. The man advanced until he stood before Milton, his final step crushing the boxed Sailor Moon figure that Milton had set aside while he trained. Milton winced as Deibu's snakeskin brogues bust through the thin cardboard and rendered the cute cartoon schoolgirl in twain.
No.
He whispered softly under his breath, his hand balling up into a fist.
Milton Oliver.
Milton Oliver. I have heard a lot about you,
spoke Deibu in his dulcet Mumbodian tones, which, like Master Yasai's, now seemed to be overdubbed into American English in Milton's head, likely a magic effect of the old man. Milton looked up at the tall alligator print-clad man, his mouth fixed into a wide rictus and his thin lips clamped around a long white cigarette. He took a big draw from the smoke and smoothed his shiny hair to one side with his left hand. Milton noticed that his right hand remained at his back the whole time, clearly hiding something, possibly a big gun or a knife. The suited tycoon laughed dryly.
I've been told that you bear the Bloodstone Chalice, Milton-san. It has been hard to find you. I think you'd better come with me.
Milton looked at the two black-suited goons on either side of Deibu. They were big and bold, and would probably beat him up if he tried to bolt it. Behind in the doorway, he could see more of the Yakuza-like mobsters filing in slowly. If he put up any sort of fight, he'd definitely be bound and bruised in seconds. Milton got up slowly, his hands raised above his head.
Okay, Dave. I'll come quietly.
You couldn't!
Not so fast,
came the voice of old Yasai, rolling out from behind one of the screens where he had concealed himself. Goro looked up, a scowl spreading across his face upon seeing his former master.
Yasai.
Yasai. I should have known that you would be here.
Yasai laughed.
This is my dojo. Of course I am here.
You fled this place hundreds of years ago like the coward you are. You could not face the truth that your apprentice had become more powerful than you.
Deibu Goro stepped forward, casting Milton aside and advancing on the old man, who he clearly had some unfinished business with. One of the huge henchmen grabbed Milton and preemptively put him in a headlock, making slinking off unseen an impossibility.
I could not stand that my apprentice had turned to evil, his mind warped by the whisperings of a demon from another world,
professed Yasai.
You have bent Anime City to his cruel biddings. Can't you see that he is using you to fabricate yet another world under his rule?
Goro smirked.
I can see that Mambodia will soon be deemed a great cosmic power. Now, with the opening of my superstore, we will gain enough notability for our so-called micro-realm to finally be rightfully considered the 8th legendary area. This is what we deserve.
Yasai shook his head.
Krag has deformed your mind, Deibu. Your evil Seishin is poisoning you. Look what it has already done to your body.
Milton thought to briefly see a shimmer of scales ripple across Deibu's stern face as Yasai said this.
I should kill you where you sit for what you did to me, old man. I take it you did not tell the bearer how you exiled me from this very dojo and left me to wander the streets alone, but a mere child with nowhere to go.
Yasai shook his head.
You had already begun the transition into the monster you are now, Goro. I had no choice.
Deibu Goro smirked again, smoothing back his dark hair and slowly withdrawing his arm from behind his back. Milton watched in horror as he saw that Deibu's hand was no ordinary skin-covered hand, but a monstrous crocodilian extremity, a scaled green raptor claw of long curved talons. Master Yasai shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Deibu raised his gruesome reptilian hand, which was at least twice as big as his head. No wonder he kept the horrid thing out of sight.
No, old man. I have learned to tame my Seishin, whereas you have enslaved yours to cart your feeble body around. Pathetic.
At this, Master Yasai took offense.
You have gone too far, Goro. You will pay for your actions. Stealer's Wheels, Act 2!
The wheelchair that the old guru sat in began to transform before Milton's eyes, shifting and reforming itself until it resembled a robotic Gundam mech, about 8 foot high, with the fragile form of Yasai sat atop it, his withered legs and sandals dangling over the headless mecha's robust metal shoulders. An unreasonably long cannon barrel protruded from the center of the bot's chest, the 2 wheelchair wheels on either side like a classic howitzer. Goro and his goons laughed. Even Milton couldn't resist a chuckle. It did look a bit silly.
This is your Seishin's final form? Pathetic.
Deibu raised his lizard hand in front of his face in a cool pose, then launched forward, taking a flying leap towards his elderly master. The hit landed on the red mech, and the grating sound of metal rang about the hall as Goro dragged his claws along the robot, leaving a line of claw marks. Yasai retaliated, issuing a punch from his secondary robot fists, sending Goro skidding back across the floor, digging his claw into the ground to reduce the knockback. Yasai fired a heavy metal bullet at Goro from his cannon, which was caught mid-air by Goro's claw and crumpled into a ball and tossed aside.
You have grown weak, old man,
laughed Goro, striking another flashy pose.
You will not be able to stop me.
Milton saw that the man's expensive suit jacket had begun to meld to his torso, becoming one with his skin that had started to turn the same scaly green as his horrible hand.
You have gone too far,
cried the perturbed Master Yasai.
The evil has overtaken you.
The crocodile man laughed and surged forward and made contact again, this time his great claw piercing Yasai's chest. Blood spurted everywhere as Goro withdrew his fiendish appendage. Yasai slumped from his mech and fell to the floor with a wet smack, his mech reverting back to its wheelchair form and bouncing over onto its side. Milton cried out through the grip of the goon.
No!
Goro laughed as his old master struggled on the floor, blood trickling from his mouth and pooling around his open wound.
You have killed me.
It had to be done.
Smirked the stalwart philanthropist.
It's just business.
Goro turned his attention to Milton.
Release him.
The goon loosened his iron grip, and Milton sprang forward, his fists ready to rumble. Goro laughed some more.
Ha ha ha! Such ferocity! Now you have seen my power. You must see that you are no match for me, young chalice bearer. Quite the contrary, Dave Grohl. I'm right ready to go.
Goro managed another smile, a line of sweat running down his scaled face, which had begun to turn back to normal skin. Evidently, the battle had taken a great toll on him.
Hadn't you better tend to your master? Go. Heed his last pathetic breaths. You're a coward.
Spat Milton.
You don't want a fair fight, do you, big hand? You have to use your powers at full capacity.
Goro turned, signalling his henchmen to follow.
This place is too
tedious. Meet me at my new superstore if you want a fair fight.
Goro and his goons made for the door at pace. Milton attempted to follow, but the withered hand of old Yasai gripped his ankle.
Let him go.
Milton turned in surprise.
Oh, you're still alive.
Yes,
Groaned the dying dotard.
but only just.
Well, get off me. I'm gonna go catch up and slay him.
Yasai shook his head, blood splattering everywhere.
No, even in his weakened state, he would pulverize you. You need more power.
Milton shook his leg free of the bony hand.
Well, you can't exactly train me now, can you? You're very much dying.
Yasai laughed a raspy laugh and coughed up a lot of blood.
No, but I can give you this.
Milton watched as the old man produced what looked like a crumpled-up hanky from his robe pocket.
What's that?
Milton stooped to receive the warm parcel as Yasai shakily dropped it into his hands.
Take it. Open it.
Milton stood and unfurled the old tissue to reveal an anemic-looking Chinese dumpling in the centre of the greasy tissue.
What? What the fuck?
Yasai chuckled, leading Milton to wonder if this was one final practical joke.
It is my life, Gyoza. The ancient method of seishin transferal of my people. You must eat it.
Eat it? Well, how old is it? How long have you been carrying it around in your little pocket for?
I don't have much time. You must eat the gyoza to have any hope of vanquishing Goro.
Oh, can I at least get some of that seishin dipping sauce to go with it?
Asked Milton.
Gunto, there is no time.
Gasped Yasai, face-planting the blood-soaked dojo floor.
Alright, okay,
said Milton, bringing the floppy dumpling to his mouth. He let the steamed dough skin touch his tongue briefly, then removed it again.
No, I can't do it.
You must do it.
Cried Yasai, experiencing a final resurgence of energy.
My life force will be transferred to yours. You will gain the power of my seishin, and your power will become superior to Deibu's.
What, really? Wait, hang on. I don't want to wind up disabled.
My power will simply be transferred to your seishin, and it will become superpowered. But I warn you, this will only last a brief amount of time while my spirit fades into the afterrealm. You must hurry to Deibu as soon as you have swallowed the gyoza.
Oh, this is crazy. Alright, I'm gonna do it.
Milton breathed in sharply and chucked the dumpling down his throat, swallowing it whole. It definitely showed its age, and tasted rather a lot like it smelled, of bins and old man's pocket.
I feel funny,
said Milton, as white cyclonic energy began to whip up around him. Yasai held his hand forth.
Go! Defeat Deibu, Goro! Absorb his power too!
And with that, the old man in his wheelchair faded into oblivion, leaving behind nothing but his weathered sandals and old grey robe. Milton looked forlornly at the rags for a moment, before the bird whizzed out from his bag pocket once more.
What are you doing out? I didn't say you could come out.
Milton made a swipe at his familiar, which had begun to radiate the brightest light it had done to date. Milton stood back, shielding his eyes from the violent rays.
Bird, cut it out! What are you doing?
When Milton could open his eyes again, he saw something most unexpected. In place of where the bird had been hovering was an incredibly shapely, yet incredibly muscular woman, standing at an impressive 8 foot. Milton's eyes adjusted a bit more, and he saw that the woman was covered tip to toe in feathers of green and yellow, and possessed the head of a noble falcon, with a headdress of wonderful yellow plumes and a long hooked beak. Milton rubbed his eyes, staring at the lady's great taloned claw feet, an impressive pair of wings.
Now, what's all this about?
The bird woman bowed, its large down-covered bosoms jiggling around like jelly on a plate. Suddenly, everything sank in for Milton.
Oh, of course. This is like a leveled-up version of my familiar from absorbing Yasai's power.
He paused to admire the feminine furry again as it batted its big eyelashes.
Who knew that the bird would evolve into such a big-breasted Bishojo?
Milton contemplated all the possibilities open to him with this new servant, but remembered what Yasai had said about it only lasting a short amount of time. He clapped his hands.
Right, Big Bird. Let's mosey on down to the Mega Mart and show Deibu what's what, once and for all.
The magnificent bird woman bowed again. Milton held forth his hand.
But one thing before we go. I have to check. Could you unmute yourself for a sec?
The lady obeyed and bellowed out in the bird's normal shrill tone, wholly at odds with its new sumptuous body.
Master Milton, let's be on our way. Climb aboard, don't be afraid.
No, not having that.
Milton winced, commanding the bird to be silent once more as he climbed upon its big womanly back. The bird spread its wonderful green and yellow wings and took off with a low swoop through the open dojo doors and out into the bright daylight of Anime City. Milton soared through the city's alleyways, clinging onto the feathered back of the upgraded bird, the wind rushing through his blonde locks.
Wow, this is fantastic! Oh, I wish you were always this cool!
They passed over the square with the fountains where the anime festival parade had finished and was being cleaned up. A few people looked up as they flew overhead, but it was nothing out of the ordinary to see a boy clinging to the back of a bird with tits. In fact, the sky all around was filled with many other bizarre flying oddities. A small girl with a red bow on a broom, an actual real Chinese dragon, and One Punch Man from One Punch Man.
Hang on, Bird. I want to try something.
Milton cautiously loosened his grip and stood up shakily, leaning forward against the rushing winds as he stood up on the bird's broad back.
It worked!
Laughed Milton, his arms outstretched as though he were atop a giant living surfboard.
Hell yes! I christen you Surfing Bird!
Milton ducked as they plunged down through a series of giant red torii gates and through Udon Town, past the noodle bar that Milton had dined in the night before, and out towards the main street, at the end of which the giant megastore stood defiantly. Milton was dismayed to see foreboding dark clouds form overhead on approach, a grim portent of what was to come. No doubt Deibu Goro was ready for him.
Okay, Bird, fly up to the roof. He's up there doing something evil, I just know it.
The bird dive-bombed downward and used the momentum to soar up the side of the building at great speeds. Milton looked down as he clung on tight. A steady trail of customers still filed in and out of the megastore, all with sacks full of merchandise. Were they in some kind of trance? Couldn't they see the danger they were in? They flew up past the giant red letters and the windows of all 100 floors until the top was in sight. The anthro bird did a huge series of majestic wing beats over the rim of the skyscraper, pulling up to the narrow handrail around its edge, whereupon Milton leapt off and pulled a superhero landing onto the altitudinal concrete zenith. It was windswept and bitterly chilly up here on the highest building in Anime City. Grey clouds surged above, with intermittent flashes of green energy spikes. The rooftop was totally barren, save for a solitary figure stood dramatically in the very centre, who, unquestionably, was Deibu Goro. Milton strode forward with appropriate swagger, fists clenched. He checked the perimeter. There wasn't a single goon in sight. Surfing Bird followed close behind, strutting along as though it were a fashion model on a catwalk, beak held high. Deibu looked up from a pager-like device he held in his one human hand and laughed, showing his deadly serrated teeth.
That's it. That's the billionth sale. With the help of your generous donations, I now have all the money in Anime City.
He tossed the device aside.
I control everything. Thousands of brainless consumers all eating my food, collecting my toys, and enjoying my adult entertainment. The greatest company cannot fail.
You want to bet on that?
Mocked Milton with a generous helping of sass.
What will you do about it, farmer boy?
Goro smirked and indicated the working man's cap that Milton wore with his outstretched green claw.
Even with your new sexy bird slave, you cannot match my power.
As if in preparation for a skirmish, Deibu's suit jacket once again melded into his skin, covering his face and left hand with the gnarly green texture.
Oh, I don't know about that. In fact, you won't be in one piece by the time I'm finished with you,
cried Milton, bellowing his rehearsed threat and propelling himself forward with a premeditated quick attack. As expected, Deibu blocked with his freakish lizard claw.
私は警告された、ベーラ。
The council warned me of you, Chalice Bearer. They told me you would come to Anime City sooner or later to defeat me. But I disagreed with them. You will not defeat me. No one will defeat me.
応答はありません。
Deibu lashed out with a spinning swipe that cut across Milton's leg and rendered a cool tear in his black jeans. The bird joined the fight, swooping around the back of Deibu and attempting a dive bomb peck.
The council? Oh, what council? The council of being a lizard-skinned loser?
Mocked Milton. Deibu struck out at Milton with another slash, this time narrowly missing his face, but snagging his Mumbodian cap and sending it fluttering off into the air, along with the flurry of banknotes Milton had stashed beneath it. Money fluttered to the floor all around the stalwart tycoon.
Council of Krag はあなた
The
を
Council of Krag knows all about you, Farmer Milton. I have assured them that I will deal with you, and I will not fail.
Oh, Krag's got a nice little party planning committee now, does he? Oh, that's cute. It's a shame I've already signed your death note.
Milton crouched and sent forth a waft of psionic energy, while Surfing Bird lunged for Goro with her giant talons outstretched. Goro cast the bird aside with a huge blow from his claw.
頭を切ると
It will not be cute when I bring them your head.
The fight continued this way for some 5 minutes, until all parties became exhausted from hurling insults and blocking attacks. Deibu Goro stood back while Milton collected and donned his cap, and assumed a manga fighting stance with one finger touching the ground.
What now, you great big Tokyo ghoul?
Teased Milton. Deibu Goro cracked his knuckles and popped his collar.
これは長いです。
I have stalled you long enough. Now I will receive my ultimate power from the heavens!
The reptilian reprobate turned his head up towards the swirling green typhoon.
私は金持ちの強いです。
To reward my great wealth and fame, Krog-san is about to bestow me with enough power to upgrade my Seishin to the max and crush you flat.
Ooh, a big spooky storm.
Mocked Milton, the bird landing at his side with a flutter.
Too bad I'm gonna kill you with one punch, man.
Deibu laughed heartily as green energy began to stream down from the cyclone and collect about him.
あなたが死んだら
After I slay you, I shall seize the chalice and travel to your world. I will take over, and soon it too will be mine.
Pah!
Scoffed Milton.
Reality will never fall for your crazy capitalist schemes.
あなたは遅れて
You do not realize that it already has?
Laughed Goro.
アニメは人類を憤慨させています
Anime is already poisoning your kind. Their brains are becoming filled with cheap, repetitive storylines, mind-numbing filler episodes, and big-titty cat girls. You cannot stop it. The greatest company will slide right in. I need only the power of the chalice. Now, behold, Lizard King, Part 2!
A thundering clap of green lightning surged down and struck Goro. In a flash of energy, the monster mogul began to grow exponentially. His scaled suit enveloped him completely, and great spiked plates began to erupt from his back. He hunched forward, and his mouth elongated, extending into a great snout, while his eyes became black and beady, seemingly losing all humanity. With a roar, the great dinosaur Goro expelled a volley of green lightning from its mouth towards Milton, who leapt out of the way just in time.
He's gone fucking Super Saiyan!
Cried Milton, jumping onto the back of Surfing Bird and making a speeding getaway as the colossal kaiju grew to cover the entirety of the roof. The gargantuan Gojira continued to augment, lunging at the escaping flying heroes with a huge, slow swipe.
Oh no! Oh, how am I gonna kill this thing?
Worried Milton, swooping from the megastore and down to street level. The beast Deibu launched itself off the side of the skyscraper and crashed down onto the road with an earth-shattering tremble, creating a seismic ripple that sent cracks through the high street. Anime citizens ran screaming in every direction as they fell into the fresh chasms and were flattened by falling structures. The giant prehistoric lizard was laying waste to everything.
He's destroying his own city!
Cried Milton.
He's completely lost the plot!
Milton looked down at the bird surfboard he rode, which he could have sworn was smaller than it was a few minutes ago. In fact, it had started to look a whole lot more plastic than it had before.
Oh no! Yasai's magic is wearing off! I've not got much time!
Anime City was already in ruins, smoke pouring from burned and destroyed buildings, and emergency sirens and gongs ringing out all around.
Well, this is not my fault this time,
remarked Milton. However, no police force or army of any kind came to save the day, as Deibu Goro had eradicated any such organizations. There was nothing that could stop the giant monster from devastating the city. In a puff of white steam, the right wing of Surfin' Bird turned back into a little flapping plastic butterfly wing, causing it to veer off to the side dramatically.
Okay, Bird, we're gonna have to make a landing.
The bird landed in the centre of the road near the train station where Milton had first arrived. The colourful cubular cars were lined up in the streets, honking away like mental, their mass evacuation preventing any kind of escape. A chubby man wearing wire-rimmed glasses in the car next to where Milton had landed was crying to himself softly. Milton frowned at the pathetic man-child and looked to the horizon, where the silhouette of Dino Deibu was raining havoc against the red setting sun. If he didn't act fast, the place would be cleared to rubble in the next 20 minutes, and his father would likely reprimand him big time. This place was at least 10 times as big as Rodworld, and the population were infinitely more indispensable. Milton scrambled onto the roof of the sad man's little car, the anthropomorphic bird following him, both of its wings now returned to their original plastic state.
I've got to get the big idiot to come over here,
thought Milton aloud.
But how?
He pondered for a moment, then his vision suddenly zoomed in with a loud whoosh. He saw Master Yasai before him, his voice echoing around a lot.
Milton-san!
Milton-san, use the power I have bestowed upon you.
The flashback ended with another whoosh, and Milton's eyes blinked open.
Of course!
He readied himself into position, channeling the power of 1,000 Koyotan monks that temporarily manifested within him, and expelled all available energy in a great neon blast.
Sunlight yellow! Overdrive!
He roared, his own limoncello shockwaves surging out around him, sending the long line of cars flying about and reducing the one beneath him to no more than a wafer-thin sheet of metal. Milton stood on one knee in the centre of the crater, his fist to the ground like Goku. The blast had been even bigger than Yasai's in the dojo and had levelled everything in a mile radius. To his left, the Lucky Cat building he had admired leaned slightly to the side and slowly crashed to the ground in a huge cloud of dust. To his right, the train that he had arrived on had been derailed and lay on its side in flames.
Oops.
He gulped. But nevertheless, the plan had worked, and the giant steps of the Deibu Godzilla shook the ground as it approached, drawn to the surge of energy and the immensely loud noise of Milton's Seishin blast. The hulking reptile slapped aside a building with its tail and stood monstrously at the end of the street facing Milton, letting out a huge roar and a crackle of green lightning.
Okay, you Tyrannosaur-looking head-ass,
shouted Milton.
It's time to duel.
He hopped onto the readied bird, whose keen avian eyes had now regrettably turned back into big green plastic googly ones. They flew out of the way just before a bolt of thunder hit the spot where they were.
I need to find some kind of weak point. These demons always have a weak point,
acknowledged Milton. The giant bipedal crocodile swiped with its megalithic claw as Milton surfed over its shoulder and around to its back. The great Chad goon instantly became confused as to where its prey had gone and quickly lost interest, returning to causing street-level mayhem. Milton turned to face the beast's back, balancing on the board in midair. He noticed a small portion on the kaiju's back where one of its scale plates seemed to be missing, exposing a patch of pink skin. He rubbed his chin.
Looks like Deibu's transformation wasn't as perfect as he would have liked.
He flew a bit closer to study the patch of fleshy weakness.
It may as well be giant kick me sign like from Robot Patrick boss fight from SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Now that's a real anime game. Forget all this Japanese crap.
Still keeping upright on the bird, Milton removed his bayonet from his backpack.
Right, bird, when I say go, we're going to launch our attack on that Titan. We're going to fly forward, and I'm going to stick him real good. Got it? Okay, go!
The bird let out a noble eagle cry and launched forward towards its target, its little butterfly wings carrying it forward at Mach speed 7. Milton leaned forward, his knees bent and his dagger clasped in 2 hands.
Sayo fucking Nara.
In seconds, the scaled body was all he could see, and he'd made contact with the weak point, the Pakinis' dagger plunging into the soft flesh. When Milton opened his eyes, he saw that the beast had vanished. He looked around, confused, but quickly realized that the demon was in fact behind him, a giant cavernous hole in his chest, oozing with a green smoke. He'd gone straight through! A mighty roar came from Deibu, and the green gargant toppled to the floor with a quake-inducing thud, sending the last of the inner city buildings toppling to the ground. Milton glid to ground level and dismounted Surf and Bird for the last time. The dust settled, and the limp, naked body of Deibu Goro became visible, lying face down in the centre of a giant crater, his Seishin suit powers relinquished. Milton kicked his motionless pale body.
Well, Deibu, looks like you were nothing more than just a ghost in the shell.
The sexy plastic bird lady stepped forward and fired a jet of white energy at Deibu from her beak, spiriting him away in a fine mist and filling the chalice, which Milton had preemptively withdrawn from his bag. He swigged long and hard from the glass, making up for what he'd lost out on last time. The drink reinvigorated him to the nines, and he adjusted his farmer's cap, looking out at the wasteland around him. He could see no survivors. What a shame. Mambodia had been one of the cooler places he'd visited thus far on his adventures. To Milton's surprise, the womanly bird stepped forward and opened her beak to talk.
Hello? Milton? Is something up with your familiar? I've been ringing for like 4.5 minutes.
His father's voice came through the buxom bird.
Hugh just got a massive magic migraine. He reckons a very powerful demonic presence has just been defeated. Are you still in Mambodia?
Maybe?
Said Milton sheepishly.
You went to Anime City, didn't you?
Chided Jamie.
Maybe?
A long sigh issued from the beak.
Look, Milton, I'm not even angry anymore. What matters is that you're alive. I think you've proven to me enough times that you can handle things for yourself now. So I'm going to take away some of your familiar's restrictions.
Milton felt all the anger towards his father about keeping Anime City a secret from him vanish in an instant.
Really?
Yeah, being out here in the far jungles has got me to thinking a lot of things. And I think I've just been a bit too harsh on you. This is a colossal undertaking for you, and a huge favour of me to ask you to kill all these demons. So the least I can do is let you have a little bit of fun with it. So no more electric shocks or anything like that.
Milton's eyes lit up.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, thanks, Dad!
And who knew there was going to be a demon in Anime City, eh? Not me.
Jamie laughed, but his tone quickly became serious.
Speaking of, the city is still standing, right?
Milton looked around at the smouldering ruins.
Well, I mean, yeah, a bit.
Jamie sighed.
Oh, damn it. I was hoping it would have been totally destroyed. That place is starting to slowly seep into reality, and it affects the minds of our young people. Just look at what it did to Japan.
Okay, Dad, I lied. The place is completely fucked. There are no survivors.
Jamie laughed.
Ah, that's my boy. Look, I promise you that we will have a pizza party or something at the house when I get back. I'm really proud of you, Milton. You're shaping up to be a seasoned Paka warrior and a well-rounded human being.
Milton grinned ear to ear, the compliments of his father meaning more to him than anything ever before.
Really, Dad?
Yes, Milton. I don't know if I've, ever said this to you before, but, I love...
The line cut out.
Dad?
There came no answer from the bird's beak, which suddenly turned back into a little drawn-on smile. The creature's magnificent feathered breasts disappeared next. Then the entire thing simply turned back into a little plastic toy, which skittered to the floor. Milton sighed, picking up his familiar and pocketing it. The magic of old Master Yasai had worn off, and with it the last of the monks of Mambodia. The final remnants of their ancient ways lived on in him now. Milton looked out to the distant rolling green hills beyond all the destruction. This place meant nothing to him now. He walked forward, crushing a Hello Kitty bento box beneath his feet. Now it was forward, and on to bigger and better things. He got out the list of demons, and crossed off number 8, Deibu Goro, with a steaming lump of hot slate. Scanning the list of names, Milton decided he would continue to go through systematically one by one. There was no time for rest now, only the bloodshed of his enemies. 13 demons down, 43 to go. This episode of Milton's Adventure, read by Ted Pawncroft, was brought to you by Pot Noodle. Cook less, live more. Life's too short to be stuck behind the stove or behind a desk. At Pot Noodle, they say, fork that. You get one life, and it's time you grabbed it by the noodles and started living it. That's why Pot Noodle are here, with their deviously delicious, cleverly convenient snacks that give you the time to experience new things, however unconventional or unexpected they may be. Time to grab life by the noodles and give it a go. Pot Noodle. You'll never find a better noodle in a pot.